Hi, this is Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us today for Live with Annie. As usual, we've started the stream a bit early. This helps us get everything set up and broadcasting properly to our various platforms. You can find a countdown clock on the screen showing how long it will be until we actually go live. While you wait, please connect with us and other viewers in the chat. Let us know where you are from and whether you're a new or longtime viewer. We'll see you live soon. Hi, it's Annie again, reminding you that we'll be going live with this week's episode shortly. There is a countdown clock on the screen showing how much time is left. You've got just enough time to grab some water or a beverage of your choice and a snack, and to connect with us in the chat. We'd love to hear what you've been working on this week. Again, it's Annie, back to remind you that we'll be starting this week's live very shortly. We've got a really fun episode planned for today, and we'll see you soon.
Hi, I'm Teresa of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 30 of season 4 of Live with Annie. Although it's Teresa today. Last week, Annie was here and she talked with Alyssa Zaccardi about her bags and how she embellishes her Tula bags with all sorts of different things with ribbon and with foundation paper piecing, and she uses all of these bright colors, and she talks a lot about making the bags her own and bringing her own personality into those bags. And we've kind of talked about this a bit lately. A few weeks ago we talked with Jade from Lovely Jubbly, and she talked all about how she does fussy cutting with her bags and how she pieces those together. And then in episode 26, Annie talked about her QPP, the quilted puzzle piecing, where she brought in already quilted pieces to bring those together to create very unique bags. And we're kind of going to keep talking about this sort of thing, about inspiring you to create bags that fit your personality. You can find all 167 of the previous episodes on YouTube, on Facebook, and on our website. So make sure that you like and follow us to stay updated with all of those. And all of this inspiration has really come to helping you find your authentic voice in your own sewing and quilting. And we're going to be talking about that more today. We're going to have a lot of questions, I'm sure. It's going to be an exciting episode. So I want to make sure that you, if you have any questions, you put them in the chat. And Hawke is here and he will get me those questions. And Randi will get me questions at the end. We'll make sure that you got all your questions answered. So this week, our guest is Karlee Porter, whose work you might be familiar with. She's been making waves in the quilting industry for about a decade now with her graffiti style quilting. And I am absolutely thrilled to invite her and have her here on our show today. So bring on in, Karlee. Yay! You made it. Hi, Karlee.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. I'm so happy you're here.
Hi. Yes, thank you for having me. Me too.
It's going to be so fun.
I'm so
So,
excited.
graffiti quilting is your thing. And for people who aren't familiar with it, can
Yes.
you explain a little bit about what it means and why it's called graffiti quilting?
Yes, totally. So graffiti quilting is all about breaking all the quilt police rules. Well, most of the quilt police rules. And the elevator pitch for it is kind of, I would put it this way. It's the act of taking every single free motion quilting motif that you know how to quilt and smashing them together all into one quilt. So it's a huge, very unique composition of lots of free motion quilting motifs. So it's all about just going with the flow. It's very free form. It's very forgiving. And it's definitely a quilting technique that relishes in the journey of quilting. So, yeah.
Got it. So I have followed your work for a while. I've seen you around in the industry at different shows, your work at different shows and that sort of thing. But I hadn't had a chance to meet you until a few months ago when you were talking here in town at a shop called Quilted Works, and you were doing a lecture there, I think with the local quilt guild. And so I asked Annie to please come along and come see this, and you gave a great presentation. It was awesome. And I know Annie asked you at that point, hey, have you ever worked with Soft and Stable before? And your answer was no. And so we gave you some, and I know that you've done a little bit of work with it. So I kind of want to talk about how that has worked and what was a little bit different with it. So your quilting style is really unique, and it really uses a lot of the space, I think, more than a lot of other quilting. And I know when I was doing this, we'll talk more about it, but like the pop of the Soft and Stable is pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I had a ball trying this out. Like you said, I have never tried it before. I typically, whenever I'm making a wall hanging or something functional like a zipper pouch, which I have a couple to show you, I typically just use up my old batting scraps and just double up on layers of batting. So it was really nice using the Soft and Stable because I didn't have to double up on batting. In fact, I didn't use batting at all. I just replaced my batting with one layer of Soft and Stable. And it was really cool too to also get a feel for scale in quilting because it's something that I hadn't dove very deeply into. Usually with graffiti quilting, as you can see on the quilt here, it's just all dense quilting everywhere because I don't know when to quit when I'm quilting. And so it was cool to kind of start to get a better feel for density, which is something that maybe sometimes we don't often think about when we're, when we're quilting. We typically get into a groove of the density of quilting that we like and we stick with it, or it only ever really changes like if you're deciding between a wall hanging quilt that's super dense or a functional quilt that you want to be super puffy and fluffy. So it was kind of a really good challenge for me to start to be more fine-tuned with my density of quilting. So I quilted a few pieces. So this is one using Soft and Stable, and I turned it into this really pretty copper zipper pouch. So I used a satin fabric, and you can tell like the density of quilting, this is kind of on par for me with density, very, very dense, right? But I think the Soft and Stable with the satin fabric was like match made in heaven, because that shine of the fabric really shows the texture nicely, but especially having that extra kind of oomph of the Soft and Stable to keep things really puffy was just really good. Like I especially love like the spot right here where it's just like the
That's
texture
so
of, I don't know why, like that spot in particular, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. So it's cool. And seeing this this zipper pouch in comparison to this zipper pouch, which was just 2 layers of batting, and I would say about the same density of quilting, but this one doesn't seem to have as much stability to it. And so I thought that was really cool too, that I felt like the Soft and Stable had almost like a sculptural element to it where I could count on it to be the stiffness that I wanted, whether or not I was quilting super dense or super loose. So that was really cool. And then I took another piece of fabric. This is some hand-dyed fabric, and I loaded it into my embroidery hoop, and I stitched this out with my embroidery machine. This is the machine I use, the Baby Lock Altair 2. It has a really nice big hoop space. And I also learned more too, again, about density, because I found that the Soft and Stable was quilted so densely that it kind of lost its oomph, except for in the areas between the butterfly and the motifs. So after I stitched the main motif, the rectangle, I took it to my sit down quilting machine, and that's when I did like the clouds and these extra paths. And I was initially going to stitch something in between these, but then I thought, no, like that's where the Soft and Stable is really shining, and it's really cool to see that texture. Again, it's almost like it reminded me of like carving in ceramics when I took ceramics in college, and like being able to carve like relief prints or like printmaking. I don't know. I really loved that element, and the Soft and Stable was nice for that. And I also really liked how the Soft and Stable, like the surface of it almost has a little bit of grip. And so when I stitched this, I didn't have to do any sort of basting, and I used this super slippery satin fabric for my backing, and I didn't have any trouble with it. And it felt like the Soft and Stable was kind of just like, stay where you're at fabric, and like just gave it kind of that nice stability, which was really, it was nice. It just was more convenient. It was more, I could focus on my quilting because I wasn't like fighting with my materials, which was really cool. So then here's a couple more that I stitched on my long arm. So this is just, this is a piece of that same black satin fabric, and you can see the density is quite tight, but even so, there's still a really like high relief of the texture. And I know that that's attributed to the Soft and Stable, which is really cool. So I took that same, so this is an edge-to-edge computerized quilting design. This is called my Graffiti Quilting Modular Edge-to-Edge Collection, and I stitched it on a diagonal. So I did the rows on a diagonal. And so I took that same design and blew it up to a larger scale so that I could really let that Soft and Stable have some like unquilted area. I know this is hard to see because the print of the fabric is so loud, but I thought that was a good idea because it just kind of made the fabric feel a little bit warmer in the sense that it wasn't so densely quilted, you know, like it was more akin to a functional quilt, even though it's going to be a functional like backpack or zipper pouch or something later. So that was cool. And then I had one more, and this was just a computerized edge-to-edge design. This is from my Gemma collection, and I feel like the texture really is what is singing on this piece of quilted fabric. So yeah, so it was cool. It was a really fun experience to try out the Soft and Stable, and I loved that it didn't have like stretch to it. And so when I loaded it on my long arm, I could just stitch down my outside edges, and I knew that everything was going to stay in place. Yeah, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to make some bags. Now I need to learn how to make like an actual backpack with a pattern, because right now, like, this is the extent of my bag making skills. So, but it's cool to know that when I'm ready, I will have the materials that I need to make a really nice, beautiful bag. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That was great. So much. Okay, so I want to go back and talk about a couple little things. One, the satin bag, it's like kind of like a little dot bag that you made there. What is on the inside of it? So you have satin on the outside.
Yeah, so on the inside, I was when I was stitching out all of these different pieces, trying out the Soft and Stable, I just used a remnant of a flat sheet that I had used for the backing of a different quilt. And so I just loaded that whole remnant on my frame, and then I just slapped these different fabrics on top of it, on top of the Soft and Stable, and just stitched out a bunch of stuff all at the same time and then cut it apart. So yeah, so I didn't line the bag at all. It's just
It's just a cotton backing.
quilting.
Got it. And so
Exactly.
you said that you just laid the fabric out. You didn't actually baste it. Did you pin baste it or anything to the Soft and Stable, or just it just stuck?
Yeah. I did notice that the Soft and Stable is thick enough that it was kind of tricky for me to load it into my embroidery hoop, because it has to like snap into place, you know, do like this thing.
Yeah.
But also I'm fairly new to doing machine embroidery, so maybe I just need to build some actual muscle, because all the machine embroideries out there are probably like, what a weakling. Like, it's not hard.
I'll tell you what the secret is.
That I'm weak.
No, it's not that you're weak, I promise. So I have minimal experience, a few years of embroidery experience, but I used to embroider more with Cuddle, and that is sort of the same thing in that it's thicker, and you don't actually hoop it. So you do something called floating it, where you put the stabilizer into your hoop, you hoop that, and then you put the Soft and Stable and the fabric on top of it, and then stitch it like that. It's much easier. So that's the way I did mine.
So it's not that I'm weak, it's that I'm stupid.
No, it's just that you didn't know. You just didn't know. So now you do. Try it that way. It's so much easier. So I actually do use a tiny bit of, I use 505 basting spray, and I spray that onto the back of the Soft and Stable and stuck it onto the embroidery hoop. So I will tell you the way that I did it, and if there are embroiderists out there who have more experience, I would love to hear from you as well. But I actually took my fat quarter, and then I basted it to the Soft and Stable, like just kind of stitched around the edges, so like kind of like a bounding box that you would do in embroidery. Then I put it onto my cutaway stabilizer, and I did the machine embroidery. So let me show you what I did, because one of the things that you were talking about is the density of the stitching, which I think is really interesting, because it's one of the things that is kind of awe-inspiring about your quilting. And when you see your actual quilts in person, there's so much quilting on there. It's really just amazing. And I was really happy to find the embroidery designs. So I got the B one, and I have two samples that I want to show you. So do we want to show the, can we show the little design of there on there, Jake? Do you have that? The Specimen Honeybee #1 is what I used. So we'll see if we can pop that up there so you can see what we're talking about. So this is the design that I found on our website, and I was like, I really like this. Now, I'm not brave enough to figure out how to exactly nest these things together and make it do that. So I did one at a time. And one of the things that was cool about this embroidery design is that it comes with, well, I think there's 4, but I used 2 different ones. So I used one that's a much more denser quilting, and then one that is a lighter quilting. So I want to show you the difference, and we'll talk about that, because this was the same thing I found, is that the denser quilting kind of smashes it, and not in a bad way, but it does smash it down. So let's see if we can get this to, there we go. Okay, we'll see if we can get that to focus, and you can see the quilting in this. I did it with a silver thread, which worked out beautifully, and I think it's gorgeous. It does smash down a whole lot of this. So the pop that you get from the Soft and Stable is really up here on this motif, which I think is beautiful. I did it on both sides. That worked out pretty well, actually. I was very happy with it. And then I did this one, which is in the same embroidery pattern, but it's what do you call them? A complex and I can't remember.
And simple. Yep.
Simple. That's, yeah.
Yeah, simple
It's
and
simple.
complex.
Right. And so the complex one pushes down a lot more of the soft and stable, and this simple one has a lot more texture. So when you touch this, there's a whole lot of pop from that. Now, could we see again what you were showing, that you had that same thing? Because you did a pantograph that was was tighter, and then you did it looser. Is that correct? Do I remember?
Yes. Yeah. So I can show you the back of them too. I didn't cut my thread, so the long lines you see through the fabric are just the thread that I was too lazy to cut.
It.
But
yeah, so we
you
can see
kind
it
of see the density
super
really
busy.
well there.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, so pretty.
yeah, and then that same, let me show you, since the front of this is so noisy with the fabric, I'll show you the back, but you can see how much looser of a density I did on this one. Quite a bit bigger.
Got it. Quite a bit bigger, and a lot, I'm sure, like physically it has a lot more texture to it as well, because of that pop that it does with the foam.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's
and,
wonderful.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I learned with the soft and stable, is that, like, for me as a quilter, I'm so used to saying the thing with the quilting, where soft and stable is like, let me say what you want to say with the unquilted space, which is, it was a cool, like, backtrack mentally for me to be like, it's okay to leave an area just a little, like, you don't have to go insane and cover the entire piece of fabric with thread. You can let some stuff breathe, because that soft and stable is going to stay stable and soft. So I liked that a lot. And that's why I felt good, like, feeling like I could leave this finished, because while this could be called unquilted, it has the texture, and so the texture becomes the thing that you're aiming for. And so that was cool to feel like the soft and stable was a really strong wingman in letting me unquilt it and not worrying about my fabric like wrinkling, because there wasn't enough muscle underneath it to keep it structurally sound. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I think it performs just really, really differently than batting does, and so it's very fun to play with. Now, one of the quilts that you had shown before, and I think that we have a picture of it, is the is it the Russian mosque? Is that the one that has like all the different colors? Is that the one I'm remembering right? So if we have that picture somewhere,
one of them.
Let's see if we have it. If not, I know that you have ones that you can show. That have all of this color. So you do a lot of thread play. And I know that you talked about this. Yeah, there we go. So that's what I'm thinking, as I wonder how this sort of thing with working with the thread color and the foam stabilizer, how that will make it even more dramatic. Because I feel like the color play that you do there of bringing different colors in makes such a difference to the design. And the idea of bringing the soft and stable into that too, I feel like would be really interesting. I'm super curious now.
So the only thing that I determined with whether to use the black soft and stable or the white soft and stable was with this quilt. So with this quilt, I knew I was going to use black backing, and I knew I was going to use black thread. And so I went with the black soft and stable on the inside. I don't know how else the color would inform what color of soft and stable to use, though. Because I guess I didn't think it would super matter, since it doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, exactly. I think just the color of the thread is the thing that I'm thinking, like, there's so much color in what you do that I think probably the white would work for almost everything. And most people probably don't know that we actually do have a black soft and stable. So if you're working with a darker fabric, that works very well, because it can sometimes beard on white or on dark fabrics, that you'll sometimes see a little bit of the white popping in if you use that with a dark fabric. So the satin worked absolutely beautifully for that, and I'm so impressed with that, because satin is definitely one of those fabrics that isn't always easy to work with and can kind of cause you a little bit of struggle. So I'm really happy to know that it didn't at all. And that was with the long arm, right? Yeah. Okay.
That one was with my embroidery machine and then my sit down, which I think was more important to the point, because with your sit down, your hands are on your fabric and you rely on grip. Like, people are usually either using gloves or they have like little grippy things, or they're basting their sandwich. But I didn't do any of that. I just went to town, and I felt like the grip that I was getting was adequate and awesome.
That's awesome. And do you had the satin side up then, right?
No, satin side down.
Satin
so
side
it was
down.
extra slippery, and
Got it.
I didn't have a problem with it. Yeah.
That's great, because
Yeah.
a lot of times that's when you'll get like a little pleat in there, is when the satin is on the bottom, because it'll want to fold up. So that's fabulous. And I think
Exactly.
that's definitely one of the selling points of Soft and Stable, in my opinion, is that grip that it has, that it does hold the fabric on there really nicely. Okay, so we talked about that one. I wanted to bring, so we did that, those were with the machine embroidery versions is what I did. And you have the pantographs, which are also available on your site. But then I want to talk a little bit about free motion quilting, and I'm going to bring Hawke in to talk about that. And I'm going to move off to the side and let him talk about that and show his bag that he did and how it worked for him. So.
All right, there I am.
Awesome.
Hi. I got introduced to you 4 years ago. Hi, Karlee. It's nice to meet you. My name's Hawke. We've talked a little bit before. Anyway, I signed up for your class at the beginning of the pandemic, and then Teresa and I started our road tour for Shannon Fabrics, and I never got to finish it. So in the last couple of weeks, I've fired up the long arm, and I've tried to put myself back to school a little bit with your techniques, and I have, here we go. This is what I got, and this has been awesome. I'm looking forward to kind of really digging back in on some of this. I found that I was missing some good lessons with the wingmen, so I kind of went back after I had done some tests, which we'll show actually. So I came out of airbrush art, and in airbrush art, I also was absorbing a lot of urban art and street art and graffiti art around me, and I was being asked to bring those motifs into my work for my clients. So I picked up a bunch of lettering. So got a little wild style lettering. Hey Jake, do you have a hand to zoom in on that? There it is. Awesome. So anyway, I started with some wild style lettering by ByAnnie, and then thought I would try to do some graffiti quilting around the perimeter and on the backside. I'm very much at the beginning of my journey with graffiti quilting, so forgive me if I don't have all of the motifs and I don't have all of my wingmen in play, but thank you. And I don't know what to. There's no question in there.
No, but what I did, I'm going to pop in here with you just for a second,
Okay,
so
cool.
stick around. Because the long army is really, like, that's what Hawke does and not what I do. So I definitely sit down on my embroidery machine and let it do its thing. But one of the things that we had talked about with this is that this was a great way to practice it, and that it's such a small space. So we'll talk about this more later. But just taking a little bit of practice and learning these different techniques is helpful, and to not try to, necessarily start with a huge quilt, but do this little guy.
I'm going to reach.
Okay.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier was how it sort of clings. Well, this worked the same way that you were describing when I loaded it onto the long arm. I loaded the backing fabric onto the long arm, and then I basically floated the Soft and Stable on top of that, and then I floated my quilt top, or in this case, just a whole cloth, on top of that. And then I used a water soluble pen to trace around this clam up template, which we have here at the studio because we make these very often. You could make your own template at home, and that really gave me the ability to focus my quilting on a specific area, not feel like I was wasting a lot of my quilting effort, and I got to react to the edges, and then I also got to build motifs that sort of let it feel like the design was expanding out past those edges. And those were two lessons that I did get to learn from you. I feel like you've broken down this potentially intimidating technique into all of these beautiful little bite sizes, and I'm super happy to be involved. And if anybody else out there is thinking about trying this, she makes it really, really accessible. So there, if I can do it, you can do it.
That's right.
Aw.
Yeah. The book that he got with the class when that was done, which I think was like 3 years ago now. And I like that the subhead for it is a simple guide to complex designs, which I think is really the whole point of it, is that it looks like a lot. Like, I couldn't do that. And then you break it down into these ways that make it very, very simple for everybody to access it. So tell us a little bit more about what you have and how people can learn about this.
Okay, I would love to. So the book that you're holding was published in 2017. So that was the second iteration of Graffiti Quilting. The first was published in 2014. And so this year is the 10-year anniversary of Graffiti Quilting, which is exciting and amazing. And I am just going to try not to cry now. So that book is about 90 pages. And the new Graffiti Quilting book is 362 pages. So I actually changed the tagline from a simple guide to complex designs to the ultimate guide to free motion quilting, because with how comprehensive the volume 2 book was, this one is like 5 times more comprehensive. And so it breaks things down even further than, if you've taken one of my previous classes, you can see that, like, not to toot my horn, but like, I'm a pretty great teacher and I'm really good at breaking things down into very, very digestible, actionable steps, right? And so this book is no different. The only difference is that now you're getting 5 times the content. So this fall, I'm teaching the 10-year anniversary Graffiti Quilting online masterclass. So I've expanded it from an 8-week course to a 12-week course. The book went from 90 pages to 362 pages. And something that's extra cool is in this new book, there's over 100 QR codes. So as you're working through the content, not only do you see it in written form, you also see images, but then you can scan QR codes that take you to interactive videos and photos that will continue to help guide you as you're learning your quilting. So for instance, like, I'll show you one page from like the simple motif section. So for instance, if we're talking about curls in the class, you'll have this nice full page spread in your textbook where we've got the text and the illustrations and we've got the photo examples. But then we also have this QR code that when you scan it, it will take you to a video where you can see all of these motifs being drawn as if they were being quilted. And the cool thing about it being digital is that not only do you see the video of them being drawn, but then as time goes on and I continue to keep doing graffiti quilting, I'll film videos of me actually quilting these and add those. So what you're getting at the front of the class is already a tremendous amount of education, very, very comprehensive, very fleshed out. But then as time goes on, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. And you have access to this incredible library of designs. So another section of the book that I'm really excited for to talk about in the online course is the section just following. So basically in the book, we talk about 18 different simple shape motifs and how to quilt them on their own. And then the section right after that is a combination of every single motif combined with another motif. So for instance, for the open flower petals section of the book, there's 18 different motifs because I'm combining the open flower petals with every other motif in the book. So it's super comprehensive where you can just say, I want to combine this design with this one. What would that look like? Flip to that page and you'll see an example of it. Scan the QR code and you'll go to the video of how to draw it and then eventually how to quilt it. So I'm so proud of this and I'm so excited. I actually just got like the giant shipment of the hardcover books this morning. And so I like you can't see the messy side of my studio, but it's filled with boxes full of books and I'm going to start shipping. Well, I have technically started shipping, but the welcome packages are awesome. They include the book either in a hardcover or soft cover, whichever one you choose. And then there's a bunch of other like gifts inside of that package as well. There's some custom printed fabric. There's a commemorative enamel pin. There's some stickers. There's some postcards. There's some homemade caramels, which are delicious and really fun. So if you didn't already have a reason to be friends with me, then maybe if I can like get you hooked on a sweet treat, that will help. But yeah, I'm super, super excited. I've really poured my heart and soul. Truly, like everything that I know about free motion quilting is in this book. And so I'm really excited to teach my students in 12 weeks what it took me 12 years to learn. I feel like I have done a really good job of just really breaking things down and eliminating a lot of the fear. I think when I started quilting, there was so much fear surrounding like just finding like the courage to just jump in and try something. And so, you know, you might look at my finished quilting and be like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I can't. But then when you look through the book and when you take the class, we sit down and I really hold your hand as we go through all these very simple shapes and how to build a really strong foundation of free motion quilting skills. And then we start to build them back up together into something that gets more and more intricate as time goes on. So yeah, that's my spiel, and I'm super excited. That class is going to start on September 7th.
Nice.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. I saw you this morning on Instagram signing copies of the book. I think that's what you were doing, is signing copies of the book. And I was like, oh, she got the book. Yeah. So that's great. Now, is it possible to just get a copy of the book and not sign up for the class?
No, so they're sold together as a set. And the reason for that is because the book will become the thing that allows you to access all of that online content. So even after the 12-week course has finished, as long as you just have your tangible copy of the book and you're logged into KarleePorter.com, then you can scan any of those QR codes. And as time continues to pass, that online content is just going to become more and more robust as I continue to add things to it. So I felt really strongly about keeping the book and the class all as an experience together. Mm-hmm. Because if I am going to show up and give you every single facet of my quilty brain, I wanted to make sure I was doing it justice. And so I just felt strongly that the best way to do that would be, you can read about it, you can look at the pictures, you can scan the codes, you can watch the videos, you can interact in the live Facebook group. You know, we'll do quarterly Q&As and things like that where I'm accessible. I didn't want to just be like, okay, here's a book, figure it out, okay, bye. You know, I wanted to really just let people know that, like, I want to be there for the long haul. If you are looking to expand your free motion quilting skills, my goal is to be the one-stop shop ultimate free motion quilting teacher that can be your cheerleader, be your critic, that can help you see yourself in the mirror as a quilter and say, where can I improve? Like, even built into the book, there's a handful of like homework assignments that we talk about. So I call them design challenges. So for instance, like one of the design challenges talks about like design principles. So it says there are lots of design principles or theories that you can recognize being used within graffiti quilting. Graffiti quilting by no means has a monopoly on these concepts. They're not specific motifs that can be learned, but concepts and theories that are applied. The better you can start to recognize them conceptually, the easier they will be to logistically employ in your quilting. As you work through this section, take some significant time and effort to understand them better. Choose 4 to 8 different quilting motifs and experiment in your sketchbook with ways that you could use these concepts in a more deliberate and specific way. So for instance, that specific design challenge was like what Hawke was talking about with the wingmen, right? And so those design challenges are scattered all throughout the book to kind of help you reflect back the things that you're learning in class. Because it's one thing to watch a lecture and watch me demonstrate. It's another thing to be right there taking notes and practicing drawing. It's another thing to load your fabric on the frame and actually get, you know, some hours of practice in. This gives you literally everything except for the practice. And I can't give you that. I wish I could. I wish I could just download myself. Well, actually, if you want me to download myself, that's when you just go to my website and download the Graffiti Quilting digital design. So then you tell your machine to stitch it for you. So I can even do that.
So it sounds like the class is so much more than just a class, and it sounds like it all works together.
Yes.
I like the way that you bring in sketching and with the actual quilting. Do you have to have a certain type of machine to be able to do this? Do you need to have a big long arm? Could you do it on a sit down? Could you do it on a machine that has like a BSR where you could just do some free motion on your domestic machine?
Yeah, so any machine that allows you to free motion quilt is a good enough machine to do graffiti quilting. Yep. So if you have a small little domestic machine, as long as you can drop those feed dogs, then you're golden. I have done free motion quilting on something as small as a little domestic machine, and then as big as a 30-inch long arm. I've also done free, like this quilt right here. I did that whole thing on my domestic embroidery machine just by dropping those feed dogs and putting on my embroidery foot. So it doesn't take a fancy special machine. It just needs a machine that you can move in any direction.
Great. Good. And that's a great way to be able to start. And I know that that's something that we've talked about is this ability to just try something, and you don't have to invest, thousands and thousands of dollars into something to get, a 10-foot long arm. You could start with your regular machine, learn the skills, and it's more than just learning how to do the graffiti quilting itself, but learning about actual free motion quilting and how to put yourself into it and go with the flow is really what you're doing. Yeah, I really love that. So I know that you have a discount code for anybody who's watching, and can we pop that up on the screen? So that is, if they go to your website, right, the discount code is BA25, and you'll get $25 off of the tuition price. Your website is KarleePorter.com, is that correct? All right, great. So make sure that you go and you can check that out. And there's a Facebook group, the book, the videos, all sorts of stuff, which is really fabulous. So I know one of the other things that you do is that you actually do custom long arming for folks too. And we have one of the folks who works for us who's running the comment section is Randi, and she actually had you quilt one of her quilts. If we could show that. I just want to show it. It is absolutely phenomenal. So this is the Big Hummer quilt from Legit Kits, and Randi is one of the testers there, and so she's lucky enough to own a Karlee Porter one now. So it's lovely, but the quilting on it is just phenomenal. And so how much, can you talk just a little bit about how you play with the design of the quilt and that, like the negative space versus the actual like image on this? Because Legit Kits are kind of different in that they're actually like kind of pictures of things. So this is of a bird and a honeysuckle, I think is maybe what that is. So how do you play with those two things?
So I think, as you probably know, if you know anything about me by now, you know that I like to show off, right? And quilting is the place that I show off. Like my piecing skills are not show-offable by any means. So when I start working with a client who is bringing me this quilt top, like my quilt tops don't have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of work already put into them before they even start quilting. I'm going straight to the quilting process. And so my main goal when I'm doing custom quilting for a client is to make sure that I'm not overshadowing what is already there. And so, for instance, with this hummingbird, I definitely took it from the point of view that this quilt is already beautiful. My quilting is just going to enhance and celebrate the beauty that already exists. And so when I quilted it, I used invisible thread because I didn't even want the thread to overshadow the fabric choice and the colors and all of that. And then, of course, I felt like it didn't just call for an edge-to-edge design. I didn't want to just completely ignore the piecing and just do my quilting across the top of it. And so together we came up with kind of like I took a photo of the quilt top and kind of drew a schematic on top of it to send to the client and say like, hey, this is kind of what I have in mind. What are your thoughts? And that's another important part of the process is communicating whatever I want to do, making sure I communicate it so that there's no surprises or just a surprise enough to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know exactly what motif she was going to do. I just knew she would do graffiti quilting. And then the client gets to look at the quilt and be like, oh, and there's a curl and there's a feather. And it's kind of this like I Spy game of joy,
Right.
because they don't know exactly what the quilting lines are going to look like, but they know the overall sense is that it's going to enhance their already beautiful quilt top. So I even actually have a couple pages in the new graffiti quilting book that talk about that, like when it talks about interpreting an existing quilt top and what that could look like. So this is a custom printed quilt top from Honest Fabric, designed by Joanna Marsh from Custom Quilts. And we talked about essentially that, where, you know, what is the quilt design already? What does it look like? And how can I interpret it? And then that's the finished quilt. And that is so fun too, because once you understand like the fundamentals of graffiti quilting, you can look at a quilt top and say, okay, I know that I'm going to do graffiti quilting in this area. You don't have to know exactly what motif is going to go where, which motif is going to build on top of the last, or which motifs are going to be combined together to make a secondary motif. You can just say, okay, I know that I'll do graffiti quilting in this area going this direction. And then when you get to your quilting, it's so enjoyable because it's unfolding in front of your eyes as well, because you've planned just enough of the quilt to get going, to eliminate that fear of being like, oh, but what if I get there and I don't know what to do or where to go next? You'll know what that answer is, but you won't have to plan every little meticulous motif before you can start moving forward. So that's kind of a little glimpse into how I would approach a quilt top that I'm quilting, where graffiti quilting is the best like alto to a beautiful soprano, right? Like I don't ever want my quilting to just steal the show if it's not meant to steal the show. Sometimes it can just be that really beautiful supporting member that can really enhance the beauty that's already there within a quilt top.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, because I know that's definitely a place that it's the where to start and how do I deal with this. So it's fabulous. We have a few questions we want to do before we close up. So one there, according to the questions, there's a little confusion as to your graffiti quilting that you do is all free motion, and that's what you're teaching people how to do is the free motion. You don't purchase designs elsewhere. You sell your own graffiti quilting designs, correct? Okay. So we want to make sure that we're clear with that. So it's all free motion that that you'll be teaching how to do. So you began as a free motion quilter and you've just sort of developed that. So when did you start doing the graffiti quilting? That was 10 years ago. And how did it start?
So really my artistic style started long before I learned how to quilt. Like I have in my cabinet, I've got sketches or stacks of sketchbooks of my style as time went on. I had a lot of influence to graffiti style when I was younger, and then just this very graphic, colorful, bright, like rainbow file type style already in me. And then I didn't actually start applying it to fabric and thread until 2009. And it was from about 2009 to 2013 where I was just getting to know the new medium, because I've always been an artist. And so it was just that point in time where I was learning how to move the quilting machine, what that muscle use felt like, and continuing to kind of just develop my own style and my own voice. And then it was in 2014 that I was like, oh my gosh, there's more here than just me like doodling on fabric. And then that's when graffiti quilting was born, was when I could finally somehow put into words what it was that I was doing with fabric and thread.
Got it. So that's when the name came about, right? So,
Yep.
All right, so we have another quick question. Did you use flannel-backed satin or just regular satin?
Just regular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there different techniques in each book, or does the current book include what was in the other two? Because you said this was your second. This is the second version.
The current
That's
book
the third
includes
version.
Everything.
It's
Yeah.
all encompassing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Another
So
question
the
we've
way-
got. Oh, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say the way that the book's kind of laid out is that they were kind of being born without the next one being planned. So like when I
Right.
wrote the first book, I just wrote everything that I knew at the time about graffiti quilting. And then it wasn't until I traveled the world over the next 3.5 years teaching that I was like, oh wait, there's more. Oh wait, there's more. And I had like Billy Mays in my head yelling at me, being like, write this stuff down because there's more here than what's in the book. And then it wasn't until 2017 that I was like, okay, if I want to do graffiti quilting justice, I have to write an updated version of the book. And obviously it should have been named second edition, not volume 2, but I'm a dumb, like I barely graduated college with my associates. So like, give me some grace there. I should have named it second edition, which is why I named the new book third edition. So yes,
Good
so
job.
if you have a copy of the previous books, wonderful. But if you are new to graffiti quilting, don't waste your time on the old books, because this book is the end all be all of everything graffiti quilting and includes
Got it.
everything from the last 10 years. So yeah,
Got
that's
it.
a great question.
So-
I'm sorry for the confusion. It's totally me being a dum-dum with
That's
naming.
okay. So there was, go back up just a little bit, Hawke. There was a question there. What level of free motion quilting skills are required for someone to be comfortable in Karlee's class?
Level 1. So if you
Level
have
1.
a machine that you know can free motion quilt and you have read your manual on the section about using your machine for free motion quilting, that is enough. I will meet you where you are. That's one thing as a teacher that I feel very, very strongly about, is that I don't want to be exclusive to any sort of level. I will meet you where you are, and the book will meet you where you are. Like, that's why I built in the free motion quilting boot camp. So there may be students who have been quilting for 2 years or even 2 decades. There will be something to learn because it's so comprehensive. But if you're at the point where you're like, I just bought a quilting machine and I'm kind of scared of it, come to me and I will help you, because like that is my goal, is to help people just overcome any fears and take a plunge. Because at the end of the day, we're, like you were saying, we're not using any crazy fancy material or a super fancy machine. We're going to start with just a fat quarter of plain cotton, plain batting, like it, nothing fancy. Because really, if you can practice your free motion quilting on very simple fabric, then it will allow you to level up to something a little less or a little more advanced later. But really, my class is so heavily focused on, like, it's design based. It's about understanding the shapes. And so yeah, if you're worried, then I think that's like your bones telling you that it's time for you to take a plunge. And so it might feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose or getting pushed in the deep end of a pool, but I will be there with floaties to help you and guide you until you're doing the backstroke all by yourself. And it will happen sooner than you think, especially with a spirit guide like me, who can show you all of the appropriate corners to cut so that you're not frustrated when you feel like you're not making progress as quickly as you would like, the way that I was, because I didn't have anyone to hold my hand or pull me out of the deep end. I was just treading water for a long time and sometimes wasting my energy on things to understand and learn a concept. But now, like, y'all don't have to do that, because I'll be here to be like, don't waste your time on this, spend your time on this, do this.
Here's the important part.
And
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned, like, you know, that you could have just gotten your machine and just be trying this. And I will say that's exactly what happened to us, is that I got a long arm, and I think it was about 2 months later that he signed up for the class, was like, all right, let's learn some of this. So absolutely, you can start at the very beginning. And as much as the class is a 12-week course, it's not really just the 12 weeks that you have to learn all this stuff.
No.
It's really the time that they get to spend with you.
And I do want to say, exactly. And with the schedule is laid out in 12 weeks so that we can stay on track. But probably 95% of the class is going to not keep up with the 12-week, like not keep up with the amount of practice that it could take to master that section. like I'm fully anticipating that it'll take people longer, which is good. That's good because the longer it takes is the more hours that we spend at our quilting machine, which is the whole point in the first place. So so that's why I say we lay it out over 12 weeks. I make you drink from a fire hose. And then over the next 5 years, you're going to continue picking up the pieces and being like, oh yeah, this from the class. I forgot about this. Now let's go back to it. I still find myself doing that as well, referencing my own book when I'm like feeling uninspired or feeling like, man, I'm just trying to think outside of the box again. I can flip to the book and be like, oh yeah, let's revisit this particular thing. Because the other thing too is that most people are probably not going to do graffiti quilting on every single quilt that they make, right? Like, and that's okay. Besides me, like I'll do that because again, it's like the one thing I'm good at. But the idea is that when you understand graffiti quilting, you can pick and choose all those different parts and say like there's a whole section in the book with 30 different free motion fillers that it's like, if I just want to do a free motion edge to edge, I can do that. And I have 30 different motifs to pick from that I can work on, where it's very, very simplified, but it's a place for you to be like, okay, I'm going to quilt 5 yards of this filler and be a master at this filler. And so even that section, and each one of those again has a QR code where you'll see how to draw it and then how to quilt it on a sit down and how to quilt it on a stand up.
Very nice.
I've thought of everything.
It seems like you might have actually thought of everything. So that's awesome. So to wrap it up, where can people find out more information about you, about your style, about the class?
So the class, you can just go to KarleePorter.com and then shop education and add it to cart and then use that coupon code BA25 and that'll give you $25 off your tuition. And then I'm most active on social media through Instagram. So it's just Karlee Porter Design on Instagram. So
great.
I'm easily Googleable. And if you're into computerized quilting or machine embroidery, KarleePorter.com also has over 1,000 digital designs, because some people are like, free motion's cool, but have you ever just pushed a button? And I'm like, I get you, I see you, I have something for you too. And so that's awesome. I love sharing digital designs, and it's an honor when people choose, out of all the digital designs available, they choose mine to put on their quilts. It's a huge honor. So if that's your, if that's your jam, then check out my digital designs on KarleePorter.com as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And I feel seen.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the machine embroidery. I'll go buy the design, put it on there. It works out great that way. So thank you very much. Well, it's been wonderful to spend some time chatting with you today and talking about graffiti quilting and about how people can get started doing something maybe a little bit different than they've tried before. So I'm really grateful that you spent the time with us today. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll see you at Market.
Yeah. Not Market, but QuiltCon next spring, hopefully.
All right.
So,
great.
Yeah.
Great.
Market's always a hard one for me because I have young kids. And so Halloween is hard for me to miss because I just have little baby boys right now. So
right. True. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. See ya.
All right, that was fabulous. There was so much information there, and I hope it has inspired you a little bit to give this a shot. She has some really wonderful techniques, and I love her attitude of anybody can do this. And I will say that my experience with it has been exactly that, is that anybody can do this. So I wanted to show, before we head out completely, I want to show you a few ways that you could get started doing this. And we showed a couple of the things that we did with the drop zone and with the clam ups, which are both really good things. But there's a couple of other ways that you could try this, and you could try the technique on a small bit of fabric and use that in your bag to try to get it to, or to add a little bit of your own authentic look to it, all right? So there's a few different patterns that we could use. One was the, are we gonna put these over here, Jake? Okay, so one would be the cut it out. And we talked about this a couple months ago. And the cut it out is the new scissor case holder. And the front of it is quilted. So this part here is quilted. And you could do this in your home machine. In the episode of, episode 21 this year, then we showed how to do this. And there it is. And that's the one I showed you how to deal with it with the embroidery machine. So you could absolutely quilt this front portion on your embroidery machine, use the little technique that we showed with the vinyl, and create only this one little space. So this is a great way of being able to do it because you don't have to quilt a lot to have it totally be usable. So you don't have to get much that looks good, which I always like to be able to work little bits at a time. The other one that we talked about was the Stash and Dash, which is another pattern that takes about, I think it's a fat quarter that would about take for both the inside and outside. So you can quilt just a section that's this big and it's about 18 inches long, quilt that up, be able to use it for this. So this is another small little project that you could do that doesn't require you to graffiti quilt an entire quilt or 2 yards of fabric. It's just little chunks. The last one that I would really recommend, and especially for anybody who is new to ByAnnie patterns, is the Easy Does It, which is a fabulous little pattern. And it is generally quilted, just straight line quilting. That's the way a lot of people do. It's a great beginner bag. And this is also a free pattern of ours. So instead, this one takes a fat quarter for both inside and outside. You would just free motion that whole fat quarter and then could use it for your bag. So I want to tell you how to get to that on the website because the pattern is free and there are videos for that. So if you're new to ByAnnie patterns, this is a great way to do it. And Jake's going to help me show you how to get there on the website so that you can get this pattern. So first you're just going to go to ByAnnie.com and you're going to log in. So if you don't have an account, you can set up an account. Otherwise, you're just going to log in. Then you're going to go over to the Learning tab. Click on that, and under Courses and Add-on Videos column, you're going to click the ByAnnie Basics. Then you're going to find and click ByAnnie Basics course. So all of the videos are put into courses now. So those ByAnnie Basics are in there. If you haven't joined it, click Join this course, and then you'll be able to scroll through and see all of the related content. Easy Does It is the last pattern there because it's the final one in that little series, and then you're going to click any of the videos to get started. So the pattern is in there as well as all the videos for how to make this little bag. You can give it a try with the free motion quilting, with her graffiti quilting, make it stand out beautifully, and then make the little bag. So that is a great place to start. And it's called Easy Does It, just as a reminder. And it is a free pattern on the website, and it will teach you a bunch. All the videos are really, really helpful. And I will say that even as a very experienced sewist, when I watched the videos recently and I made the bag myself, I still learned lots of things in that process. So I cannot recommend those videos highly enough. All right, so I hope that was enough information. I hope you enjoyed yourself. As always, please ask for these patterns and supplies at your local quilt shop. These shops are an important part of our sewing and quilting community, and it's up to all of us to keep them strong and vibrant. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to see a video clip where we get to visit Avonport Fabrics in Nova Scotia, and that we are featuring them on social media this week. So you'll see them a few times. They're a great little shop. Make sure to watch that video. And also, we want to let you know that there will be some statewide shop hops happening this summer. The All Mid-Atlantic Shop Hop is in July and August. So we still have a whole month of that. All Illinois Shop Hop and the All Ohio Shop Hop are both August and September. So plenty of time to get out there and visit a bunch of shops and tell them all that Annie says hi. Thank you again to everyone who has joined us today. We'll be back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time with another inspiring episode of Live with Annie. She'll be back after her much needed respite in Montana, and she will be joined by Nicole from Stitch It Up to share even more inspiration on bag making. Until then, happy stitching. Hi, I'm Teresa Coates of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Today, we are visiting Avonport Fabrics in Avonport, Nova Scotia, Canada. They were the 2024 winners of the local quilt shop contest for Nova Scotia, a peninsula on the Atlantic coast. Avonport Fabrics opened in 2022, but it was really just a restart from its previous incarnation. Originally, it was the Avonport Discount Center, first opened in 1990 as a hardware store. As happens in small towns, a fabric selection was soon added to the hardware, and the store cultivated a large community of avid quilters. Faye Brown ran this adored business for 32 years before deciding it was time to retire and close the business. But Mary Nielsen, a longtime customer and new employee of Avonport Discount Center, couldn't bear to see it close. She bought the business from Faye and reopened it as Avonport Fabrics, continuing its long history of providing excellent customer service and low prices for local quilters. Filling nearly 2,000 square feet, the store is simple yet welcoming to customers, and they are often rearranging and moving fabric around the shop, making each visit unique and full of new finds. Mary runs the shop along with her employees, Kathy and Laura, who keep things running smoothly 5 days a week. This trio has developed quite a reputation for being both knowledgeable and helpful, and many of the respondents in the local quilt shop contest noted this. Lynn said, Mary and her team are a dream come true for anyone looking to get into the sewing game. They provide lots of helpful tips and tricks and always know what direction I should proceed in with my projects when I have hesitations. This is something that we often want as quilters, just a little thoughtful advice on a project. Even the husbands love it. Clarence told us, my wife is able to find what she's looking for within a short period of time, which means less waiting in the car for me. It is a win-win. What a good sport, and kudos to Avonport Fabric for making his wife's trips into the local quilt shop quick and successful. If you live in the northeastern United States or southeastern Canada, you might find yourself in need of a visit to Nova Scotia, and when you do, make sure you visit Avonport tucked in along the coastline. Just down the road, you'll find the delightful Noggins Corner Farm Market with you-pick apple trees and wagon rides. And across the island, you'll find the picturesque Lunenburg Waterfront Marina with its restaurants, distilleries, and galleries. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is just an hour's drive away. I so enjoyed learning more about Avonport Fabrics, and I hope that you did too. You can find out more about them at avonportfabrics.ca. Until next time, happy stitching!